He showed up to the wrong building, drenched, tired, and just trying to deliver a package. What he didn't expect was for the CEO to stop everything, look him straight in the eye, and say, "This was always yours." Sometimes the wrong turn leads to the right story. If you believe in second chances, quiet acts of kindness, and the kind of love that finds you when you've stopped looking, then stay with us. And if this is the kind of story that speaks to your heart, we invite you to subscribe and be part of a growing community that celebrates healing hope and the beauty of unexpected moments. Now, let's begin. Single dad showed up to the wrong company. The CEO looked at him and said, "This was always yours." Rain struck the windshield like 1,000 needles as Jack Monroe squinted through the blur of Seattle's early morning haze. The GPS on his cracked dashboard flickered again, recalculating the route for the third time in 10 minutes. "Come on," he muttered, tapping the screen as the digital voice barked, "You have arrived at your destination." He glanced around. No loading dock, no clinic sign. Just a sleek, glass-covered building towering into the clouds, its chrome logo reading Rentech Innovations. This can't be right. Still, he was late. The package in the passenger seat, an orthopedic assistive module, was temperature-sensitive and urgently needed. Jack sighed, grabbed his thermos, and stepped out the rain, soaking his hoodie before he reached the revolving doors. Inside, the air was warm, filtered too clean. Marble floors gleamed under soft lights. A receptionist behind a digital kiosk glanced up but didn't speak. Jack approached the counter, pulling out the delivery form, but before he could say a word, a security scanner beeped softly. A robotic voice from overhead chimed, "Welcome, Mr. Monroe. Executive access granted. Elevator to level 41 is now open." Jack blinked. "Excuse me?" The receptionist smiled mechanically. "Mr. Monroe, they're expecting you upstairs. I think there's a mistake, level 41, sir." A soft ding echoed behind him. The elevator doors parted. He hesitated, package still in hand. Something felt off. But the receptionist was already speaking into her headset, and he didn't want to look like a fool arguing with a building that apparently knew his name. Jack stepped in. The doors closed. As the elevator climbed, he caught his reflection in the mirrored wall. Graying beard, rain-speckled jacket, tool belt slung over one shoulder. He looked like a repairman who'd taken a wrong turn inside a luxury mall. "What the hell is this place?" he whispered. Ding. Level 41. The doors opened into a quiet, high-ceilinged hallway. Every surface glowed. A panoramic window revealed the Seattle skyline blurred by mist. He followed the only sound, a low murmur of voices, until he reached a conference room with frosted glass walls. Inside sat a dozen people in suits around a vast table. A screen displayed diagrams of an advanced medical device. At the head of the table, a woman was speaking. Sharp posture, measured voice. She looked powerful, precise. The kind of person Jack would have once tried to impress and now actively avoided. Someone noticed him. The woman turned. She stopped mid-sentence. Silence fell over the room. Their eyes met. Her mouth opened, then closed again. Her breath caught visibly. Her hand gripped the edge of the podium as if to steady herself. Jack shifted uncomfortably. "Sorry, I think I'm in the wrong. Jack Monroe." Her voice was a whisper, as if saying his name summoned something she'd buried. Jack nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's me." The room fell completely silent. The woman stepped forward, eyes locked on his face. You really don't remember me, do you?" He frowned. Something about her face, something faintly familiar in the eyes. "I'm Evelyn," she said. "Evelyn Wren." He blinked. The name stirred something at the back of his mind. But it couldn't be. The last Evelyn he knew wore grease-stained coveralls and lived on vending machine snacks in a cluttered machine shop. This woman, she looked like she ran empires. I'm sorry," he said, shifting the package in his hands. "I think there's been some kind of mix-up. I'm just making a delivery." "You're not just making a delivery." Evelyn cut in softly. You walked into the building I built because of you." Jack opened his mouth, closed it. She walked closer slowly as if afraid he might vanish. "I was a nobody back then. Broke. Lost. You taught me how to read blueprints. You let me work late when no one else cared. You said I had something worth fighting for." He felt the air shift. The conference room behind her faded. It was like the ground beneath his feet had changed shape. "I was just trying to help," he said, confused. That was years ago. It was everything she whispered. Then she did something no CEO in a boardroom ever does. She stepped closer and gently touched his arm as if confirming he was real. "This company. Jack, the core design, the mechanical foundation. Everything I built started from that napkin sketch you showed me that night at the diner. You probably don't even remember, but I've kept it. For 15 years. Jack stared at her. Napkin. Diner. Rainy night. An old sketch, some wearable joint design he drew while explaining mechanical leverage using salt shakers. God. He remembered, but he never thought she would. The silence stretched. Then one of the board members cleared his throat. "Should we, continue later?" Evelyn, she didn't take her eyes off Jack. "Yes, we'll reconvene at noon." Everyone filed out without a word, their expressions curious, confused, and borderline reverent, as if Jack had just stepped out of a legend they'd heard whispered about. When the room emptied, Evelyn stepped back, visibly gathering herself. "I tried to find you," she said. "For years. After I graduated, after I got my first grant. But you were gone. Disconnected numbers moved out of state. It's like you vanished." He shook his head slowly. "My wife passed. I left the field. Took care of my daughter. I wasn't looking to be found." Evelyn's expression softened. "And yet, somehow, the universe brought you right back here." Jack's voice was dry. "Thanks to a busted GPS." Evelyn smiled for the first time, but there was moisture in her eyes. "Or maybe, because something needed to be returned to you." She looked down at the package in his hands. "I'm not talking about that." Jack followed her gaze, then looked back up more lost than ever. And somewhere deep inside his chest, beneath years of silence, struggle, and survival, something small stirred. A breath of a dream he thought had long died. But Evelyn Wren was standing here, and she had never forgotten. Jack barely remembered taking the elevator down. His fingers still clutched the delivery package like a lifeline, though the storm outside had already softened to a whisper. He stepped out into the damp air of Seattle, blinking into the gray morning as if surfacing from a dream he hadn't meant to enter. The GPS in his truck had reset itself. Now it blared another location 2 blocks down the actual clinic that had ordered the orthopedic module. Jack stared at the screen, jaw clenched, then tossed the GPS aside with a dry laugh. "Of course," he muttered. He delivered the package in silence, offered a tight smile to the nurse who signed off, then climbed back into his rusted pickup. The engine coughed before giving in. The wipers squeaked, once useless now that the rain had stopped. But Jack wasn't moving. His knuckles tightened around the wheel. "This company was built because of you." Her voice was still in his head, not demanding, not apologetic, just certain. Like she had rehearsed that truth for 15 years and still didn't believe she got to say it aloud. But she wasn't wrong. The napkin, the diner, the salt shaker and pepper grinder that became mock-up joints. He had drawn it for her after hours when she stayed late asking questions no intern had any business asking. She was hungry to learn, and back then he had time to teach. Before Emily got sick, before everything collapsed. He started the engine and pulled into traffic, but his thoughts stayed behind on the 41st floor. By the time he turned onto his street, the morning sun had pierced the clouds. A row of modest houses lined the quiet cul-de-sac, each showing the wear of families getting by. Jack parked in front of his home, a faded blue single-story with gutters that hadn't been cleaned since autumn. He barely stepped out before the front door swung open and a small voice called out. Daddy Maya dashed barefoot down the walk, backpack bouncing behind her. Jack's shoulders eased for the first time that morning. "Hey, slow down, Bug. I thought you weren't going to make it in time." She puffed. "You promised to check my bike tire before school." He crouched down, brushing her tangled hair away from her face. "I know. Sorry, I got turned around downtown. Had to deliver to a place that wasn't where it was supposed to be." Maya frowned. "Another rich people tower?" Jack smiled, despite himself. "Something like that." He checked the tire quickly, small puncture, nothing new. He patched it with the efficiency of someone who'd fixed more than just bicycles in his lifetime. "Okay, ready to roll," he said. Maya grinned, climbed on, and then paused. "Dad?" "Yeah. You look weird." "Weird how?" She squinted. Like you saw a ghost or something. But not scary. More like surprised." Jack stared at her, stunned by the accuracy. "Maybe I did," he said quietly. "A ghost that remembers me better than I remember myself." Maya tilted her head. "That doesn't make any sense." "No," Jack murmured. "It really doesn't." He dropped her off at school and watched her disappear through the front doors, surrounded by classmates. She turned back once to wave at him, her smile as bright and steady as the girl her mother never got to see grow up. Jack didn't drive away immediately. He sat there thinking about Evelyn, about what she'd said, about the version of him that used to believe a simple idea sketched on a napkin could change something in the world. He used to believe in those things, used to believe in himself. Now he believed in making rent, in getting Maya to school with lunch packed and shoes tied. He believed in small victories like fixing a neighbor's dryer for $30 or finding a used textbook for Maya at Goodwill. But dreams, those had gone silent a long time ago. And yet, someone still remembered. That night, he couldn't sleep. He sat at the kitchen table long after Maya had drifted off, her sketchbook spread across her bed like wings. She had drawn another idea for an anti-wobble shoe, a concept he once told her about from an old research paper. She'd added sparkles and labeled each part carefully in a child's handwriting. "Balance for everybody," it read at the top. "Inspired by my dad." Jack stared at it, heart tight. The knock came at 9:42 p.m. He wasn't expecting anyone. He opened the door and froze. Evelyn stood there in a dark trench coat, hair slightly damp, a folder in her hand, and something fragile in her expression. "Hi," she said. "Hi," he replied, unsure what universe he'd stepped into. "Sorry to come this late," she said, hesitating. "I didn't want to call and give you a reason to say no." He raised an eyebrow. To what? She held up the folder. "To a job offer. Short term. Freelance consulting. You won't be an employee. No PR. No press. Just come in and see what we're working on. Give us advice, like you used to give me." Jack crossed his arms. Why Evelyn didn't flinch? Because you've built things this world forgot how to appreciate. And because the younger engineers, they don't know what they're missing. But they should. Jack stared at her. She added softer now. "And because I think you need to be seen again, Jack. Really seen." There it was. That quiet pull he thought was gone. He looked past her into the street, shimmering with wet pavement. The last time someone saw him for who he was, he had a ring on his hand and hope in his heart. And then life swallowed all of it. But now, unexpectedly, someone had brought a piece of it back. He exhaled. "Just a month?" he asked. "Just a month," Evelyn said. "And if you hate it, I disappear." He opened the door wider. "Then come in. But I make terrible coffee." She smiled. "That's okay. I didn't come for coffee." The next morning, Jack stood in front of Rentec's mirrored lobby doors in a clean shirt and a jacket that hadn't seen daylight in years. It was still too loose around the shoulders. His reflection looked like a man trying to slip back into a version of himself he wasn't sure still fit. A security guard buzzed him in without question. Inside the building felt even more alien in daylight. Polished, unapologetically modern. The kind of place built to impress investors, not shelter dreamers. He walked past a team of fresh-faced employees in Rentec polos who barely glanced up from their tablets. He followed the signs toward Product Development, Mobility Division. When the elevator doors opened on the third floor, he stepped into a wide workspace full of modular desks, test rigs, 3D printers, and one big central table where half a dozen engineers stood around a half-assembled exoskeletal frame. A young man with a tablet looked up. "You're—" Monroe Jack nodded. "I thought you'd be older," the man said. Jack almost laughed. "You mean older than this?" The guy cracked a smile, then returned to his tablet without comment. A woman with cropped hair and thick glasses gave him a polite nod and motioned toward an empty desk in the corner. No nameplate, no welcome, just space. Evelyn hadn't shown up yet. Jack rolled up his sleeves. The morning passed slowly. Jack wandered the floor, watching, listening. No one asked his opinion. Most avoided eye contact. Their conversations were peppered with terms that hadn't existed when he left the field. Machine learning modules, real-time sensor optimization, predictive gait modeling. He felt like a man who'd left the country and returned to find the language had evolved without him. But tools were still tools. Steel was still steel. And torque still obeyed the same damn rules. Across the room, a junior tech named Justin was wrestling with a servo motor attached to a carbon fiber ankle joint. The motor whined, then bucked, causing the foot prototype to twist awkwardly. "It's jumping again," Justin muttered. "Dampening algorithms not syncing with the feedback loop." Jack watched a moment, then walked over. "Mind if I try something?" Justin hesitated. The others glanced up. Jack didn't wait. He crouched, pressed 2 fingers gently against the actuator casing, then loosened the tension collar by half a turn. The whine stopped. The ankle flexed smoothly. Justin blinked. "What? What did you do?" Jack didn't answer. He just handed him a pair of calipers. "Check the tolerance range now. I'm guessing you'll find the drift is under 1.5. Justin took the measurement. His eyebrows lifted. Exactly 1.4. Someone in the back muttered, "No way." Jack stood. "Your algorithm's fine. The part was misaligned from the start. You were trying to fix a mechanical issue with code. Happens all the time." For the first time that morning, the room went quiet. Jack returned to his desk without fanfare. By noon, Evelyn arrived. She walked through the lab with easy authority, greeting each employee with a nod or a kind word. Then her eyes found Jack where he sat sketching on a legal pad, one boot resting on the lower rail of his desk. "How's your first day?" she asked. Jack gestured to the workspace. Quiet, but enlightening. She leaned in, lowering her voice. "Did they let you near the hardware?" "I fixed a foot," he said. "Nobody's thrown me out yet." She smiled. "You're already famous. Apparently you spotted a defect in 2 minutes that 3 engineers missed all week." "I didn't spot anything. I just listened." "Listened?" Jack nodded toward the rig. "Motors talk. You just have to know what you're hearing." Evelyn's smile faded to something softer. "That's why I needed you here." After lunch, Jack took a walk through the building's west wing. A long glass wall overlooked a physical therapy gym below where children tested mobility devices in a supervised environment. One girl, maybe 10, was strapped into a prototype walking harness. Her therapist held her arms as she tried haltingly to take a step. The girl wobbled and cried out not in pain, but frustration. Jack pressed a hand against the glass. That could have been Maya 3 years ago when her growth spurt threw off her center of balance for months. He remembered holding her while she screamed at her own legs. The guilt of not being able to fix it had nearly crushed him. Now, here was a building full of people trying to fix it for other children. And one of the people responsible had once been a girl with oil under her fingernails and dreams too big for her pocket. That evening, Jack returned home to find Maya building a science project with cardboard and glue sticks. "I'm making a prototype," she announced. "Like you?" He raised an eyebrow. "Oh yeah, it's a shock-absorbing shoe for playgrounds, made with old yoga mats." He crouched next to her, taking in the messy layers of foam and her carefully labeled notes. "You know what this needs," he said. "A better design." He laughed. Well, yeah, but also, a partner. Maya beamed. You'll help me. He nodded. We'll make it together. She leaned her head on his arm. Did you have a good day, Dad? He paused. Yeah, he said, voice quiet. I remembered something I thought I lost. Like what? He looked at her, really looked, and felt that stirring again, the one Evelyn had sparked. The one he thought had burned out, like how it feels to build something that matters. Later that night, alone in the garage, Jack opened an old drawer and pulled out a cracked leather portfolio he hadn't touched in years. Inside were sketches, ideas that never made it past paper, wearable mobility bands, lightweight exosuits for kids, a shock-absorbent spine brace. He ran a hand across the yellowed page, then slowly he flipped to a blank sheet and started drawing again. On Friday morning, the skies over Seattle parted just long enough for sunlight to spill through Jack's bedroom window, warming the wood floor like an invitation. He woke to the sound of Maya humming from the kitchen, her voice soft and out of tune the way her mother used to sing. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, stretched and listened. I packed us both lunch, Maya called out. PB&J and the last of the trail mix. You owe me the chocolate chips. Jack walked into the kitchen, surprised to find her dressed and ready backpack on, beaming. Us both. Evelyn said I could come today. Remember, you said Friday. He blinked. Right, today's the tour. Maya held up a hand-painted badge that read, Official Junior Engineer. She emailed it to me. I printed it at school. Jack gave a slow smile. Guess I'd better bring my A game. Maya grinned and did a dramatic pose. Bring your dad game. They arrived at Rentec just before 10. Jack swiped them in at the front desk, Maya proudly showing her badge to the security guard who chuckled and offered a fist bump. Inside the building looked different through her eyes. She craned her neck to take in the vaulted ceilings, the suspended light fixtures like floating rings. Everything was polished and futuristic. Whoa, she breathed. It's like NASA had a baby with a science museum. Evelyn met them in the lobby. She knelt slightly to Maya's level. Welcome to the command center. Maya beamed. Do I get to see the robots? Even better, Evelyn said. You get to see what they're for. The tour moved through departments' design labs, 3D printing bays, motion capture studios. Maya asked smart questions, soaking in every answer. She touched wall panels, peeked into drawers, gasped at a robotic arm assembling a tiny hydraulic frame. But it was the last stop that shifted something. The rehabilitation gym. From the balcony above, Maya looked down at a wide padded room where kids practiced with therapists. Some walked with robotic braces. Some struggled. Others sat in wheelchairs watching their friends with quiet eyes. One boy stood in the center of the room. 10 years old, maybe. Narrow shoulders, an oversized knee brace wrapped around his right leg. A therapist beside him counted softly. Ready? Try one more. He lifted his foot and immediately stumbled. The brace twisted slightly. His face tightened in frustration. Maya leaned closer against the glass. He's mad. I know that face. Jack nodded. You used to make it. I still do, she said, not taking her eyes off the boy. Suddenly, the therapist waved to someone upstairs. A staff member entered the room and called up to Evelyn. We're having tracking issues with Liam's brace again. Evelyn turned to Jack. That's prototype 3. Still unstable. We're adjusting tension tolerances, but I'll take a look. Minutes later, Jack was kneeling in front of the boy Liam. The therapist looked skeptical but didn't protest when Evelyn introduced Jack as a senior mobility advisor. Jack smiled at Liam gently. Mind if I check something? Liam looked to his therapist, then gave a small nod. Jack adjusted the side joint of the brace, then ran a thumb along the inner rod, listening. He tightened 2 bolts with a quiet click. The boy shifted his weight, and for the first time, the brace didn't wobble. Jack tapped the side of it. Okay, let's try now. The room hushed. Liam lifted his leg. It held. He took 1 step, then another, and then a third. Everyone in the gym stopped. The therapist whispered, stunned, "He's never made it past 2. Jack stood back, hands folded, watching the boy walk slow, uneven, determined. Maya whispered from the gallery above, voice cracking, "Dad." "You fixed it." He looked up at her. Her face was lit with something he hadn't seen in years, pure awe. Not because he was her dad, because he was someone. That evening back home, Maya was quiet at dinner. Jack poured them both orange juice and sat across from her. "You okay?" She looked up, eyes wide. "I didn't know you used to do that. With machines. And people." Jack hesitated. "I used to. A long time ago. Why'd you stop?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked around the little kitchen, the chipped countertop, the wobbly table leg he'd fixed 3 times, and then back at her. "Because when your mom got sick, I had to focus on something else. On you. And afterward, I didn't think I had anything left to offer." Maya set down her fork. "That's dumb." Jack blinked. "Excuse me. You still had everything. You fixed that brace in like 5 seconds. You saw that kid. And he saw you. You just forgot who you are, that's all." He stared at her. She shrugged, chewing again. "But it's okay. I remembered for you." Later, as she drifted off to sleep, Jack sat in the hallway just outside her room, the light from under her door pooling around his shoes. He leaned back against the wall, head tilted, eyes closed. Somewhere in the distance he could still hear Liam's footsteps, halting, determined. Every clumsy step louder than any applause. Jack whispered to the silence, "You still matter." And this time, he believed it. The next morning, Evelyn sent him a message. "Everyone's talking about Liam. I told them it was all you. The team wants your help integrating your fix into the new batch." "Come in early," Jack replied with a smile. "I'll bring coffee, the cheap kind." As he closed his phone, Maya came bouncing into the room with her sketch pad. "Dad, can I show you something?" He looked up. "Of course." She held up a crude drawing of a walking brace, one with sparkles, adjustable knobs, and wheels on the side. "It's called the Walker Wonder. It's for kids who feel like they don't belong. You think they'd let me help design one?" Jack pulled her close, voice low. "I think they'll need you to." It was just after dusk when Evelyn found herself standing outside the small, weather-worn house, once again holding 2 takeout bags and a bottle of ginger ale. She hadn't planned to stop by, certainly not unannounced, but something about the way Jack had looked at Liam that afternoon, the way Maya had looked at him, made it impossible to go home. She knocked softly. Inside, Jack opened the door, still in his work boots, sleeves rolled up, grease smudged faintly across his forearm. He raised an eyebrow. "I didn't know we were celebrating." "We're not," Evelyn said, holding up the food. "We're remembering." Jack stepped aside to let her in. Maya had already eaten and was curled up on the couch, earbuds in, humming along to a song only she could hear. She waved at Evelyn sleepily, then disappeared into her room. Jack cleared a spot at the small kitchen table, brushing away loose blueprints and a screwdriver. "Careful where you sit," he said. "That chair complains more than I do." Evelyn smiled, setting down the food. "Lucky for you, I eat standing." They shared a quiet meal. No big conversations, no heavy questions. Just clinking plastic forks and the occasional chuckle over Maya's latest invention, this one involving rubber bands, paper clips, and something dangerously close to a slingshot. When they'd finished, Evelyn reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small folded napkin. Jack blinked. It was old, yellowed, faint blue ink still visible across the soft creases. He leaned forward slowly. The sketch. His sketch. 2 parallel lines angled like human legs, notes scribbled in the margins. Jack stared at it like it might vanish. "You kept it," he murmured. Evelyn didn't speak at first. Then softly, "This is where my company started. In a diner booth with a mechanic who taught me leverage by turning salt shakers into femurs." Jack let out a breath, almost a laugh, but his eyes were suddenly glossy. "You remembered all that I remembered, everything she said, because no one else ever saw me back then." She stood and walked toward the window, arms folded loosely across her chest. I was 19. Homeless. My financial aid had fallen through. I was sleeping on the floor of the college print room during finals. I lied my way into that internship just for a warm place to be. Jack's brow furrowed. I never knew. No one did, she said. I was good at hiding it. But you were the first person who didn't look past me. You explained things without making me feel dumb. You noticed when I skipped lunch. You left half a sandwich on the bench and said, "Guess I'm full today." He looked away, his throat tight. That wasn't charity. That was instinct. "No," she said gently, "that was kindness." Jack sat back in his chair, fingers tapping the table absently. "I figured you moved on, got better mentors, better tools, left all of that behind." "I never left you behind," Evelyn said. "After I graduated, I tried to reach you. I wrote to the shop, but it had closed. The number you gave me was disconnected. No email, no address. It was like you'd disappeared." "I had to," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Emily got worse. Then the hospital bills came. I sold the truck, dropped every freelance contract. When she passed, Maya was just 2. There was no space left in my life for blueprints. Evelyn turned toward him. Her expression held no pity, just understanding. "And yet you still carry this," she said, gesturing toward the designs strewn on the table. He smiled faintly. "Guess some dreams get folded up but never thrown out." She stepped closer, eyes meeting his. "I wanted to say thank you a long time ago, Jack. Not just for the sketch, for the way you saw me. You gave me permission to believe I could build something when I didn't even believe I belonged." He looked at her. Really looked and saw not just the CEO or the driven woman he'd encountered again weeks ago, but the girl from the shop floor. The one with the smudged glasses and hunger in her eyes. The one who never stopped asking why. "I think," Jack said, voice low, "you would have built this company with or without me." "No," she said simply. "Without you, I would have survived, but I never would have dared." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was thick with something unspoken, deeper than nostalgia, more fragile than romance. A tether. Evelyn sat again, her hands wrapped around the bottle of ginger ale like it held something sacred. "I think," she said, choosing her words carefully, "there's a version of this story where we stayed in touch, where I found you sooner, where maybe we didn't just meet in a memory." Jack's gaze dropped to the napkin sketch. He nodded. "I've imagined that version, too." Evelyn looked down, then laughed once softly. "We sound like 2 people who missed their train and decided the station was home." Jack met her eyes. Maybe. Or maybe the train just took a longer route. Just then, Maya cracked open her door, hair-tousled eyes half-lidded. Dad Jack stood immediately. "Yeah, honey," she rubbed her eyes. "You were singing. In your head." He chuckled. "Was I?" She nodded. "Mom said you used to hum when you were happy." The room went still. Jack blinked hard, then smiled. She was right. Maya looked at Evelyn. "Are you staying?" Evelyn smiled kindly. "Not tonight." Maya looked disappointed. "Okay. Good night, then." Jack walked her back to bed and tucked her in. When he returned, Evelyn had gathered her coat but hadn't moved toward the door. "I meant what I said," she told him. "You didn't just give me knowledge, you gave me permission." Jack nodded. "And you gave it back." She lingered a moment longer, then stepped outside. The night air was crisp. Evelyn turned at the bottom of the porch steps. "I still have your wrench," she said. "The one you let me borrow forever." "It's in my office." Jack laughed. "Guess you owe me a visit." She smiled. "Maybe I'll bring it back." "Eventually." As she disappeared into the night, Jack stood in the doorway, hand resting on the frame. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like a man left behind. He felt like a man on his way. The following Monday at Rentec began, like most others, coffee keycard buzzes and early morning chatter from the engineering floor. But beneath the hum of activity, something had shifted. Jack could feel it. He entered the workspace with a quiet nod to the staff, set his thermos down, and immediately sensed the room wasn't as warm as it had been last week. The nods were fewer. A few glances darted his way, then quickly looked elsewhere. He didn't take it personally. He never did. But he noticed. Especially when Justin, the young engineer who'd once eagerly sought his input, now kept his distance, head buried in his laptop. Jack sat at his desk reviewing new data on the gait assist units they were optimizing for children with limited hip mobility. But the numbers blurred. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling, listening again this time, not for motors, but for the silence between people. Something was wrong. Upstairs in a corner office walled with glass and influence, Margot Sloan watched the lab's live feed. She didn't like what she saw. Margot was one of Rentec's earliest private equity investors. In her 60s, impeccably styled and sharp-eyed, she wore power like perfume. She hadn't built this company, but she had ensured it survived its early winters. And she didn't like uncertainty, particularly not when it walked through her company's front door in steel-toed boots and fixed billion-dollar tech with a wrench. She picked up her phone. "Evelyn," she said calmly, "come see me." Evelyn arrived minutes later, still in her lab coat, her expression unreadable. "You're worried about Jack," she said, skipping the formalities. Margot smiled thinly. "Worried, number cautious?" "Absolutely." Evelyn folded her arms. "He's consulting, quietly. No interviews, no press." "But people are talking," Margot said. "Your engineers follow him around like he's Moses. You gave him floor access, proprietary datasets, and your personal endorsement. Do you know how that looks?" Evelyn's jaw tightened. "Like trust." Margot steepled her fingers. "I have no issue with trust. I have issue with structure. The media's sniffing around the Liam story. They're going to ask who fixed that brace. They're going to find him. And when they do, if they learn he's not on the payroll, not a shareholder, not protected." "What then?" Evelyn said. "Nothing." Margot leaned forward. "Evelyn, you built this company with rigor, discipline. You don't need ghosts from your past, however well-meaning, disrupting what you've built." Evelyn's voice dropped. "He's not a ghost. He's part of this foundation." "Then put him in writing," Margot said coldly. "Or put him outside the walls." By lunchtime, the whispers had reached the floor. Jack heard his name twice from behind closed doors, once in a hallway, once from a passing intern who immediately turned red upon seeing him. He didn't need to ask. He'd lived this before at the last job he had before Emily got sick. The one where a supervisor liked his ideas but not his presence. The one where he'd been called a little too unpolished for client-facing roles. Now, here he was again. No title, no badge. Just experience and no shield. At 3:10 p.m., Evelyn came down. Her face betrayed nothing as she motioned for Jack to join her outside. They stepped into a side stairwell, quiet and concrete and echoing like a confessional. "They're putting pressure on you," Jack said. She nodded. "Margot wants boundaries." "I don't blame her," Jack replied. "You've got millions in funding and a guy who showed up in a rain-soaked hoodie fixing critical tech with his fingers. It's not about the hoodie." He smiled. "It never is." They stood in silence for a moment. "I can go," Jack said finally. "I came because you asked, but I never meant to threaten anything." Evelyn's voice cracked slightly. "You didn't threaten anything. You reminded people of something. That knowledge isn't always shiny. That real value can't be dressed up." Jack leaned against the railing. "I don't want Maya caught in this." Evelyn looked up at him sharply. "She's not. She's inspired. You saw the way she lit up. You made her believe." "I can do that from home," Jack said. "I don't need a badge to be her dad." "No," Evelyn whispered, "but maybe for once, you deserve to be more than just her dad." He turned to her, then eyes searching. Evelyn took a breath. "Jack, I've spent 15 years building something because of what you showed me. Now I finally have the power to protect someone like you, and I'm not going to let a boardroom tell me you don't belong." He blinked, startled by the fierceness in her voice. "I want to formalize your role," she said. Official consultant, floor clearance, legal protection, everything. But I also want something else. He waited. I want you to take back the credit you gave away, she said softly. You built the seed of this company. Let the world know. Jack looked down the stairwell. The silence pressed against his back. I'm not used to being seen like that anymore, he said. Evelyn stepped closer. Then let me remind you how. That night, Jack picked up Maya from art class. She climbed into the passenger seat holding up a finger-painted design of her Walker Wonder Brace. I added a handle on the back, she said, so if a kid falls, someone can pull them up easy. Jack stared at the picture, his throat thick. That's brilliant. Think they'll build it? I think you will. She looked at him. You okay, Dad? You look serious. Jack reached over, brushed a curl from her face. Someone asked me today if I wanted to be seen again. Maya tilted her head. What did you say? He smiled faintly. I said, I'm still thinking about it. She grinned. Well, I see you. That was enough. Almost. The next morning, Jack walked into Rentec wearing a name badge. Jack Monroe, Senior Technical Consultant. The engineers looked up. No one whispered. They just nodded, like he belonged, because now he did. The story broke on a Wednesday. Jack was hunched over a test rig in the Rentec lab when Justin rushed in, breathless, waving his phone like it was a flare. It's everywhere, he said, eyes wide. Everywhere. Jack looked up confused. Justin turned the screen toward him. The man behind the brace, Rentec's secret genius. Single father fixes what technology couldn't. The hidden hero of Rentec's breakthrough. His face was there blurred, then sharpened. In one, he was tightening a joint on Liam's prototype. In another, he stood in profile, unaware as Maya watched him from above, eyes wide with pride. Jack's stomach dropped. How the hell did they get these photos? He muttered. Evelyn appeared in the doorway, her face tight. Internal leak, she said. Marketing sent early drafts of the press release to a freelance editor. Someone shared it without permission. Jack tossed the wrench onto the bench. You told me this wouldn't be public. I meant it. I never intended for this to happen. They called me a hidden genius. Jack said, his voice sharp. That's not a compliment. That's a setup. Evelyn's voice softened. You deserve to be recognized. I deserve control. This, he gestured toward the phone, is the opposite. The room was silent. Justin slowly backed away, pretending to check his notes. Evelyn stepped closer. We'll do damage control. Pull it down if we can. But Jack wasn't listening anymore. That night at Maya's school, things got worse. He pulled into the pickup line just as she stepped out of the building, head down, clutching her backpack like it weighed more than it should. He got out. Hey, Bug. She didn't answer. When she climbed into the truck, she stared out the window. Jack sat behind the wheel a moment before speaking. Rough day. She shrugged. What happened? Nothing, she muttered. He turned the engine off. Maya. She clenched her jaw. Some kids in 6th grade showed everyone your face on Instagram. Said you were the guy from the sad story. That I was only at Rentec because you were dating the boss. Jack's breath caught. Maya's voice cracked. One of them said your wife probably ran away because you're not good enough. Silence. Heavy and instant. Jack stared ahead. The ache in his chest was familiar, like an old wound reopened by a thoughtless hand. I'm so sorry, he said softly. Maya didn't cry, but her fists were tight. I liked it better when no one knew anything, she whispered. Jack closed his eyes. Me too. Back at home, the air was still. Jack made dinner, but neither of them ate much. Maya pushed noodles around her plate in silence. Jack sat across from her, guilt rippling beneath his skin. After she went to bed, he stood in the garage, hands on his hips, surrounded by half-finished sketches and scattered bolts. He looked at them and felt none of the warmth they used to bring. He picked up a wrench, put it down, picked up a blueprint, crumpled it. Then his phone buzzed. Evelyn, I know today was hard. Want to talk? Jack didn't answer. The next morning, he drove Maya to school in silence. Before she stepped out, he reached for her hand. Listen, he said. You never have to explain who I am to anyone. But if you ever want to, tell them this: I didn't fix a machine. I helped a kid walk. That's all. And you're the best thing I ever built. Maya blinked. Then, slowly, she smiled. Just a little. Okay, she whispered. He watched her walk into school with her shoulders a little straighter. Later, Jack walked into Evelyn's office unannounced. She looked up from her desk. Jack. He held up a hand. Don't apologize. She stood. I'm not. But I will say this, you're right. You deserved control. And I lost sight of that. Jack exhaled. I've been invisible for a long time, Evelyn. It wasn't always painful. Sometimes it was safer, quieter. I know, but I saw what happened to Maya. And if I disappear now, she'll think being invisible is the only way to be safe. Evelyn's eyes welled. You want to stay. I want to stand up for her. Not for the press, not for praise. For the little girl who wants to design a brace with sparkles and a handle so no kid falls alone. Evelyn smiled. Then let's give her a reason to believe in what we're doing. Jack nodded. But no more headlines. If we go public again, it's her name they see. That afternoon, Jack returned to the floor. He gathered the engineers and told them the truth about the brace, about his time away, about failure, and about coming back. I'm not here to take credit, he said. I'm here to build something that outlives me, that lifts someone else. The room was still. Then Justin clapped. Then others followed, and Evelyn watched from the back, arms folded, pride in her eyes. That night, Maya sat beside Jack, drawing in her sketchbook. He peeked over. Is that glitter? He asked. Maya grinned. You said I could make it sparkle. He laughed. Well, I did. You always had the better ideas. She leaned her head on his shoulder. You think anyone will still make fun of me? She asked. Jack kissed the top of her head. Maybe. But they won't matter. Why not? Because you're the kind of kid who'll turn their words into inventions. And someday, they'll wish they were on your team. Maya's smile returned. And in that moment, Jack realized the storm hadn't broken him. It had cleared the sky. The garage was dimly lit, silent, except for the low hum of Jack's old work lamp and the ticking of a wall clock that hadn't worked properly in years. Tools lined the pegboard like soldiers waiting for orders. But tonight, Jack wasn't building anything. He was packing it all away. The blueprints were stacked neatly wrapped in twine. The prototypes he and Maya had begun, her glittery brace ideas, his rediscovered exoskeletal sketches, were boxed and labeled Someday. He stood over them, silent. The headlines had faded. Rentec's PR team had pivoted to a sanitized version of the story. The press moved on. But Maya hadn't. Though she smiled now, Jack saw how she hesitated before speaking in class, how she flinched when someone whispered her name in the hallway. Kids had short attention spans but long memories. And Jack had made a choice: disappear again. Quietly. Cleanly. Because if stepping back gave his daughter peace, he would do it 1,000 times. He reached for the wrench Evelyn had once returned to him, his old one, the handle still scuffed from years in the field, and set it on top of the box. One final gesture. Then came the knock. Soft. Measured. He didn't need to open the door to know who it was. But he did anyway. Evelyn stood there, hair damp from the night mist jacket pulled tight around her. In her arms was a small box, the kind used for keepsakes or letters too valuable to fold. She didn't say hello. She simply stepped inside. Jack moved a pile of tools from the bench and gestured for her to sit. She did, setting the box between them. I heard from Maya's teacher, she said softly. She gave a presentation this week on accessible design, ended with a slide that said, "Everyone deserves to walk toward their dream." Jack exhaled through his nose. She wrote that by herself. She said it was something her dad told her once. His jaw tightened. Evelyn looked around. "So this is how you vanish?" "I'm not vanishing," he said. "I'm protecting her. She doesn't need your protection, Jack. She needs your presence. There's a difference." Jack sat heavily on the stool beside her. "She's just a kid, and you're her model for what showing up looks like." He rubbed his hands together. They were rough from years of manual work, but he had always preferred calluses to regrets. "She'll be fine," he said. "Kids are resilient." "She doesn't need to be fine," Evelyn said. "She needs to see her father believe in himself." Jack was silent. After a moment, Evelyn reached for the box and opened it. Inside was the original prototype, his original prototype refined and built from the napkin sketch they'd once shared at the diner. She lifted it gently, setting it in his hands. He stared at it like it was a relic from another life. "I had this made in secret," she said. "Not because you needed a reminder, because I did." He turned it over slowly. The lines were the same. So were the mechanics. But someone, maybe her engineers, maybe her, had kept every element that bore his touch. "I don't—" He shook his head, eyes burning. "I don't deserve this. You gave it away before you ever claimed it." He looked at her. "I wasn't trying to leave a legacy." Evelyn smiled, tears in her eyes. "But you did." They sat there, the prototype between them, the silence thick with memory and something more, something beginning again. "I was going to leave," he said after a long pause. "Walk away for good." Evelyn nodded. "I know. I didn't want Maya to carry my burden." "She's not. She's carrying your light. There's a difference." Jack closed his eyes. "I'm scared." "So am I," Evelyn admitted. "But I'd rather be scared with you here than be safe knowing you buried yourself again." He opened his eyes. She held his gaze. "I want to offer you something," she said. "But this time, not as a CEO, not as the girl you once helped. As a partner." Jack blinked. What kind of partner? She took his hand. "A real one. Life. Work. Maybe more, if you're willing." His breath caught. "I want you to be part of this company, Jack. Formally. Not hidden, not honorary. I want you to co-lead our new child mobility division. With your name. Your vision. And Maya's ideas, too." He looked down. "I walked away once. And still, you came back." Jack said nothing for a long while. Then finally, "I don't have the polish. I don't know half the new language your engineers use. But they listen to you. Because you know what matters." She smiled. "You taught me what matters." He looked at the prototype again. Then at the boxes filled with someday. "Maybe it's time," he said slowly, "to stop putting someday in a box." She nodded, eyes glistening. "Maybe it's time to build it instead." Jack smiled, small at first, then real. And in that dim garage, surrounded by memories of things he once let go, he finally reached out and took back what had always been his. Not just the prototype, but the right to keep building. Later that night, Maya found the prototype on the kitchen table with a note scribbled beside it in black pen. "Sparkle model incoming. I'll need your help." "Dad," she grinned. And for the first time since the headline, since the whispers at school, she didn't just feel proud. She felt like she was part of something bigger than both of them. They weren't hiding anymore. They were creating. The conference room on Rentec's top floor had never held this many people. The chairs were filled. The walls lined. Even the media station outside buzzed with early chatter as microphones were checked and lenses polished. Jack stood behind the frosted glass doors, tugging gently at the collar of the only blazer he owned. Maya sat beside him, swinging her legs, wearing the exact same badge Evelyn had printed for her the first time she'd visited the building official junior engineer. She'd added glitter glue this time. "You nervous, Jack?" asked her, kneeling so they were eye level. She smirked. "I'm 11. I live for this." He laughed, and it broke the tension in his chest like sunlight cracks through clouds. Behind them, Evelyn stepped up. Her presence was sharp as ever, but today she wore something warmer in her eyes. "You ready?" she asked. "No," Jack replied honestly. "But I'm here. That counts for something." She smiled. "It counts for everything." The doors opened. The cameras turned as Evelyn took the podium. Behind her on a screen, the Rentec logo shimmered into a live feed of the mobility division, the very space Jack had once entered by mistake. She cleared her throat. 3 months ago, someone walked through these doors without intention, without invitation, and without a title. But that person changed the course of this company because sometimes the things that matter most aren't in the job description. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I've spoken often about innovation, she continued, but rarely about inheritance. This company was built not just on capital and code, but on character. Years ago, in a diner with bad coffee and better intentions, a man gave me a sketch on a napkin that became the foundation of what you now know as Rentec. She looked toward Jack. Their eyes met. Today, we honor that man. Not as a consultant, not as a silent contributor, but as our official co-founder emeritus. Gasps, whispers. And more importantly, Evelyn said, her voice softening as a man who reminded us that sometimes the things you give away without credit are the very gifts that build the future. Applause broke out, polite at first, then growing. Some stood, some didn't know whether they should. But Jack remained seated, still stunned. Then Maya nudged him. Dad. He rose, walked to the podium, took the mic with hands that had once only held tools. Jack cleared his throat. The applause quieted. I didn't expect this, he said. I've spent most of my life behind machines. Fixing what's broken, never thought I'd be asked to stand in front of one that works. A light chuckle rolled through the room. I want to thank Evelyn not just for this, but for seeing me when I forgot how to see myself. And I want to thank all of you who took a chance on an old guy with calluses and more coffee than polish. A pause. But I also want to say this, I didn't build Rentec alone. I didn't walk this road without help. I had a wife who once told me that building things was how I prayed. I had a daughter who reminded me that sparkle belongs in science. And I had a student, Evelyn, who turned a napkin sketch into a life. He looked at Maya. She was leaning forward in her seat, eyes shining. I know this industry loves names, Jack continued, and headlines, and founder stories. But if I'm going to have my name attached to anything, let it be to a company that believes every kid deserves a way forward. He turned back to Evelyn. And if I'm going to accept this title, I'm also going to share it. She blinked. Jack reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, held it up. This, he said, is a patent registration form for a new line of pediatric mobility braces designed not just for function, but for joy. The design belongs to someone who's been testing ideas on our living room floor for weeks. He turned the screen behind him to show a digital rendering of Maya's Walker Wonder, complete with adjustable handle, flexible shell, and, yes, glitter lining. The audience gasped, then applauded again. I want the world to know. Jack said that the future isn't just something we build for our kids, it's something we build with them. He stepped aside and gestured to the crowd. Maya Monroe, junior engineer, and, starting today, co-inventor. The room erupted. Maya blushed furiously, but her grin could have powered the city. Evelyn stepped forward again, her voice thick. Jack, I have no words. He smiled. Good, I've been hogging the mic long enough. After the event, reporters lined up to ask Evelyn and Jack about the company's next steps. Evelyn handled most of them gracefully, but when one asked Mr. Monroe what made you come back, Jack didn't hesitate. Because someone once told me that the greatest things we build are the ones that carry others. He turned, reached for Maya's hand. And in that moment, with cameras flashing and lights overhead, he didn't feel exposed. He felt visible, and finally proud. That night, they returned home to find neighbors on the porch with cookies, well wishes, and laughter. Kids rode bikes on the cul-de-sac. Someone had even taped a hand-drawn sign to the mailbox. We're proud of you, Mr. Monroe. Maya beamed. Jack turned to Evelyn as she stood beside him, arms folded, smiling softly. You started something big today, she said. He shook his head. We did. She stepped closer, lowered her voice. I wasn't just talking about the company. He looked at her, eyes gentle. neither was I. And in that shared stillness with warmth in their hearts and a world slowly tilting toward something better, Jack Monroe finally accepted not only the title he'd once been too humble to claim, but the life that came with it. A life built on grace, and reclaimed piece by love. The days that followed felt different. Not louder, not flashier, just fuller. The lab buzzed with new energy. Engineers who once avoided eye contact now pulled Jack aside to ask questions, to show him prototypes, to hear his thoughts, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. They had seen what he brought to life, not just in metal or code, but in people. Rentec's new pediatric line Stride Bright had officially launched as a collaboration between Jack's mechanics, Evelyn's systems vision, and Maya's startling, sparkly creativity. The name had been Maya's suggestion. Because we're helping kids walk toward something bright, she'd explained. Even Margot Sloan, ever poised and pragmatic, had pulled Jack aside to say, "I underestimated you. That won't happen again." Jack had nodded, equal parts amused and humbled. Most people do. It's all right, gives me a head start. The weeks became rhythm. Every morning, Jack and Evelyn met in the design bay with coffee and quiet conversations before the team arrived. Jack would bring in sketches from late-night thoughts, and Evelyn would slide in spreadsheets or CAD modifications while teasing his handwriting. "You do know it's 2025, right?" she smirked one morning. "There's software for this." "I am the software," Jack replied. She laughed, really laughed, and Jack smiled like a man who hadn't for a long time remembered the sound of joy as something he was allowed to cause. One evening, the lab emptied early after a team milestone, a successful test of their lightest ever frame. The engineers had gone out to celebrate, but Jack stayed behind, tweaking torque settings on the new Wonder model brace, which now came in 3 sizes and 5 colors. Evelyn reappeared holding a bottle of wine and 2 paper cups. "I don't have glasses," she said, shrugging. "Didn't plan on this." Jack wiped his hands and nodded to the prototype. "Neither did I. Still turned out okay." They poured. "Toasted." "To sparkle," she said. "To strength," he replied. They sat side by side on the bench legs, brushing, not quite touching. The lab lights buzzed softly overhead, casting a gold hue over years of work-loss rediscovery, and the delicate, impossible thing growing between them now. "I never asked," she said, after a moment. "Do you miss the old version of your life?" He exhaled. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it. Just fixing things and coming home to Maya." I knew where I stood. And now he looked at her. "Now I'm learning to stand taller." She nodded, swirling her wine. "I always thought leadership was about knowing exactly where you're going," she said. "But lately, I think maybe it's about having someone to walk beside even when you're not sure." Jack turned to her. "That's not leadership," he said. "That's love." The word hung there, soft, undemanding, real. She didn't flinch. Instead, Evelyn set her cup down, folded her hands in her lap, and asked quietly, "If we had met again sooner, do you think we would have found our way here anyway?" Jack took a long breath. "I think we might have gotten in our own way. Back then I thought I had to do everything alone. That being strong meant being silent. I don't think I could have seen you for who you were becoming." She smiled gently. "And I was so determined to prove myself I probably would have chased the next ladder before realizing the one I needed was already beside me." They both laughed. Soft understanding. Then silence. Not because there was nothing to say, but because they didn't need to say it. And then Evelyn whispered something she hadn't said out loud in years. "I'm tired of standing alone at the top." Jack looked at her, truly looked. The woman who had built an empire from a napkin and fire, who had weathered boardroom's burnout betrayal, who had found him again not to use him, but to return something he never asked for back. "I'm not good at this," he said honestly. "I come with dents, some sharp edges." Evelyn smiled. "So do all the best tools." And just like that, something broke open between them. Not rushed, not rehearsed, earned. She leaned in first just enough. He met her halfway, and the kiss was quiet. The kind you only share when the person in front of you knows all the parts of you that were once broken and chooses to kiss them anyway. Later, they sat in silence again, fingers laced together. Evelyn's head rested on Jack's shoulder, the curve of her smile tucked into the hollow of his collar. "You know," she whispered, "there's something poetic about all of this." "How so?" "Two people who thought they'd been passed by, who were just waiting, until one of them walked through the wrong door." Jack chuckled. "Best wrong turn I ever made." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "Then don't walk away again. I'm not going anywhere." Back home, Maya was asleep, her sketchpad splayed open beside her. Jack peeked inside. A new drawing, him, Evelyn, Maya, and a dozen smiling kids in brightly colored braces walking side by side under a banner that read, "Dream Builders." He gently pulled a blanket over her, kissed her forehead, then returned to his desk. On a fresh sheet of paper, he began sketching again, this time with room for more than just parts and bolts. He drew possibility, because the man who once believed his story had ended was now helping others write their beginning. A gentle breeze rustled the banners that lined the city park, each one bearing the same 4 words in bold, colorful font: Stride Bright Community Launch Day. Beneath the archway, volunteers in Rentec t-shirts guided families toward rows of booths, activity tables, and an open demo area where children in bright mobility braces took their first public steps, some wobbling, some running, all smiling. It was more than an event. It was a celebration of possibility, and at the center of it all stood Jack Monroe, rolling up his sleeves beside Maya as they assembled one last test rig. Evelyn, clipboard in hand, managed the volunteers with a balance of grace and quiet command, her eyes catching his now and then across the lawn. Jack watched her for a moment before returning his attention to Maya. "Okay, kiddo," he said, tightening the last bolt. "She's ready." Maya looked at the small stage beside them, then at the group of kids waiting their turn to try her invention, the Walker Wonder Plus, the first adjustable pediatric brace co-designed by a child for children. "Think they'll like it?" she asked. Jack crouched beside her. "You think I'd let them use it if I didn't?" She grinned, nerves melting behind excitement. Good point. The day flowed like music. Parents watched with teary eyes as their children walked farther than they had ever dared. Therapists took notes. Reporters filmed. But no one stole the spotlight because everyone here had earned it. At one booth, kids decorated their own brace covers with paints and stickers. At another, engineers demonstrated how their prototypes adapted to individual needs. Nearby, Evelyn gave interviews not about projections or patents, but about stories. Human ones. Jack stood near the back for most of it, content to observe, until Evelyn found him again in the quietest corner of the field. "They keep asking me where you are," she said. "I'm right here. They mean why you're not on stage." Jack shrugged. "Today's not about me." Evelyn tilted her head. "You really still believe that I really believe," he said gently, "that everything worth building has to outgrow its builder." She smiled. "So you're saying we've succeeded. I'm saying we've begun." Later that afternoon, Jack stood before the final audience of the day, a crowd of parents, educators, and community leaders gathered under a white canopy as the sun cast gold across the lawn. Evelyn introduced him not with fanfare, but with a sentence that hushed the crowd. "This man taught me that small kindness can build empires, and that building one dream often starts by helping someone else believe in theirs." Jack stepped up to the mic, Maya beside him, holding her glitter-splashed prototype like a trophy made of heart. He looked at her, then out at the sea of faces. "My name is Jack Monroe," he began, "and for a long time I thought my best work was behind me. I was a mechanic, a father, a husband once, and then just a man trying to keep the lights on." He paused, but I was wrong. He lifted Maya's brace. "This is the best thing I've ever helped build. Not because of how it moves, but because of why it exists." He turned to Maya, voice catching. My daughter believed in me before I remembered how to believe in myself. And that's what changed everything." Maya blushed, grinning behind her curls. "I used to think I was just fixing machines," Jack said. "But now I know I was always meant to help people walk forward, to walk toward something, toward a life, toward hope, toward each other." The applause that followed wasn't thunderous, it was steady, heartfelt. The kind that doesn't cheer for spectacle but for truth. Afterward, as the crowd dispersed and families lingered in the golden hour light, Jack pulled Maya aside near the edge of the field. In his hand was a slim, wrapped envelope. "What's this?" she asked. He handed it to her gently. She tore it open, revealing a certificate printed on parchment paper. Her name at the top in bold serif, Maya Monroe, official co-inventor and junior partner. In recognition of her contribution to the Walker Wonder series and the future of pediatric mobility. Beneath it was a small gold-embossed logo, Rentec Plus Maya Designs. Her mouth fell open. You're serious?" Jack nodded, eyes glinting. "You're the reason half those kids are smiling today." She threw her arms around him, squeezing so hard he almost dropped the frame. "You gave me the idea," she said. "And you gave it life," he whispered. She stepped back, holding the certificate to her chest like it was oxygen. "I'm going to hang this on my wall," I figured. "But, Dad." "Yeah." Her voice dropped to a near whisper. "Does this mean we're kind of a team now?" Jack bent to meet her eyes. "Kiddo, we've always been a team." She smiled so wide it nearly split her face. As the sun dipped low and the last tent came down, Evelyn found Jack sitting on a bench watching the shadows grow long. She sat beside him without a word. They watched Maya run through the grass, a pack of other kids chasing after her, braces glinting like superhero gear. "It's beautiful," Evelyn said softly. Jack nodded. "It is." Evelyn turned to him. "So, what now?" He looked up at the sky, then at her. "Now," he said, "now we keep walking." She reached for his hand, and as the stars blinked alive overhead, quiet, steady waiting, Jack knew something he hadn't believed for years, that no matter how far you've fallen, there's always a way back to light. You just have to follow the steps of the people you love. Final message. This is a story not just about second chances, but about the quiet, steady power of kindness, about the gifts we give that we forget, and the lives they shape long after we've moved on. May it remind you that no kindness is wasted, no love is too late, and that the best things we build are never built alone. Thank you for walking with Jack, Evelyn, and Maya. Keep walking forward. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. Your stories and reflections always inspire us. And if this story touched your heart, consider subscribing to the channel. Every week we bring you more stories of kindness, resilience, and quiet moments that change everything. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care of yourself and take care of each other.